Okay, here we are with part 2 of our little interplanetary spaceplane demonstration. So, last time we left our boys, Ambo and Jebediah, they were all hooked up on the refueling station, and just checking in to make sure I've got all the tanks full. You can see I've got good speed set up here, but I actually didn't bother setting up everything in advance, but still, we're loaded up, I think. I'm just make a last check on the monoprop and stuff. Yeah, it's all good. Time to back off. Hang on, no, the undocking control isn't on this one. Have to go to the other one. So there we go. Just pop us off. Camera shifts as the weight goes, and RCS on for a second to get us away. But oh, hang on. I think I've still got the control set to the docking port. So yeah, there we go, back to cockpit, and now just tap the RCS down a bit. Come on. There we go. So we're starting to drift clear now. It's all good. Yeah, so where are we going today? Let's see, just make sure everything's right on the plane before we head off anywhere. It's all looking nice, still got all our wings. But yeah, so, well, if you have a look at the name there, you can probably guess where we're going. But there we are, bing. Okay, you'll notice my mouse tracking is still off, so everything's a bit crooked. So here we have lovely pork chop plots from MechJeb, and there's a transfer window coming right up. So we'll just focus in on the bit we're interested in. There we go, perfect little blue dot. Look at that, yeah, 1,000 meters a second, it's nothing. So, we'll lock that in, and looks like we've got a week or two to wait. So, I suspect that I'm going to cut forward a little bit here. Let's just set up an alarm first so that I don't accidentally go zooming past my transfer window. There we go. All good to go. Nice. Right, yeah. So engine set, ready to go. Oh, sorry. Left the docking board open, that's the last thing. We have to, doesn't make any functional difference, but we have to be tidy as we leave. It's very important to be stylish before you head off on a big trip. So, how are the boys doing? Yeah, well, yeah, they're looking happy. And here we are. Okay, this is time warping around the planet. So we're flicking from dayside to nightside every few seconds. I always get slightly freaked out by how well illuminated the Kerbals' mouths are. They seem to have a glow from within. So yeah, let's just zoom around a bit. Ooh, scenic. And I think we're just about there. You notice too, also, well, you'll see in a second when I start doing the burn. Okay, you could put your refueling station at 70 kilometers. That makes it the most easy to get to. You need less fuel to get there. Oh, here we go, burning off. And as you can, here's the problem with your nuclear rockets. Take a look at the length of that burn. So I'm letting MechJeb do this because just watching the game for 15 minutes while you slowly chug along is rather tedious. But what was I saying just before? I had a vague point about something. Yeah, I have no idea at all now. Oh well, maybe it'll come to me in 10 minutes. Yeah, Ambo's due again. There's no blue, he's fine. Going into planetary, not a problem. Flying in atmosphere, terrifying. Jeb's happy as always and still has his dental problem showing. So, yep, cruising along. They should have some like games on the monitor or something. There should be built-in, centipede interraster prop monitor or whatever, so the pilots have something to do while they're waiting for these 20-minute non-nuclear burns to happen. That's what I was saying. Okay, your refueling station at 70 kilometers. That's the easiest and cheapest to get to if you put it there, but there are a couple of reasons not to. One, it makes it a bit awkward to intercept with because you can't drop underneath it. But also, when you're doing these big interplanetary burns, especially if you're doing it with a low thrust ship, often you start out pointing straight at the planet and burning straight down. If you're doing it from a high orbit, then by the time you get down to the planet, you've already kind of orbited past it. But if you're using a low thrust ship and you try to go interplanetary from a low orbit, you may find yourself trying to skim through the atmosphere at about 10 kilometers up while you're doing Mark 12, which ain't gonna work that well. So, but yeah, well, so chugging, nearly got the burn done. There we go. And you can see it's used a tiny snippet of fuel, so we've still got something like 5 kilometers of delta V left. So that's the other thing. So one, I keep whinging about the nuke rockets being a bit tedious to use, but they're just so much better than everything else that if I wanted to go interplanetary without the nuclear rockets, I would have to build a ship, several times the size. And that would bring its own tediousness in hauling some gigantic lumbering monstrosity up through the atmosphere. But yeah, we've just got a little correction burn here in the middle. Partly because of rounding errors in the physics and stuff, and also because MechJeb isn't perfect, you'll often be a little bit off on your orbit. But if you do a correction while you're still a long way out, the cost in delta V is tiny, and you can set your incoming orbit to hit pretty much whatever you want. So if you're planning on coming in for a polar orbit for, say, you're doing some sort of scientific survey satellite, then instead of wasting all that fuel on the inclination change when you get there, set it up on the way in. And here you see, if you focus your view onto the planet in question, then zoom in, long before you get there, you can see your exact path of where you're going. And what I'm doing here is I'm just tapping RCS, because you're seeing these tiny centimeters worth of delta V can have big effects out here. So I can just fine-tune my periapsis to wherever I want. So I'm going to set it up here for an aero brake so we can save a bit of fuel on the way in. Juno's a bit of a nuisance to aero brake on because the atmosphere is so thin and low. So to make it work, you have to come in scary low over the planet, and even then you don't get as much braking as you might expect out of it. But it is enough for a capture if you do it right. So let's see if I do it right. So coming on, zooming in. Whoosh. It is scenic, but Juno's also a bit bland. There's red and there's white and there's not much else. Although it's a bit more interesting once you get down to ground level. So, well, we'll see if I make it down to ground level. Alright, so I've got the intakes open. Even though there's no oxygen up here, there's nothing for the jets to run on, having the intakes open gives me more drag. So that will help me slow down more rapidly and make the aero brake more effective. So you can see here, because I'm nose into the wind, instead of having the drag focused underneath like you would when you're climbing, it's just all over the ship. The sensitivity's up a bit too high here, but yeah, so turn it down a touch. And you can see, it's slightly different focuses here and there. But yeah, this is mostly just cruising, killing time while I cruise on in there. So yeah, we're still going at, like you can see, we're still going at well over escape velocity here. So I'm not trying to pull the nose up like I would on a normal re-entry to Kerbin. Because even if I just keep it pointing the way I'm going to come zooming, buzz through the atmosphere and zoom straight out the other side of it. So what I'm actually going to need to do is hold the nose down, keep myself in the atmosphere for, well, as long as necessary. I was about to say as long as possible, but that's only the case if you're planning on going in straight for a landing, and I've got some things to do before I do that. So yeah, I've got the RCS on here because we're about to... Okay, 17,000, we're very, very low. We're only just really starting to hit the real Junie's atmosphere. It technically starts at 40k, but you don't really feel anything until about here. I've got the RCS on again just for the nose burners, just to give it a bit of yaw stability, because we're going very, very fast. We're moving through a rapidly changing atmosphere because we're still dropping quite quick. But the atmosphere is still thin enough that the rudder doesn't have a lot of grip. So just having that little bit of thrust either side of the nose just gives me a bit of insurance. That means I don't have to babysit the direction of the plane quite as much. And you can see up here, I'm not babysitting at all. I'm letting MechJeb handle the thing entirely. So the surface settings on MechJeb are quite handy for this sort of thing, where you are essentially just flying straight for a long time, so it's a bit, sometimes, you get a bit bored of doing it yourself. And, okay, some people call the MechJebby stuff cheating. It's been 100 years since any real aeroplane has flown without at least this level of autopilot. Just lock heading, lock pitch is something that planes do. Apart from, home-built hang glider, microlight sort of things. So yeah, I'm just holding the nose a bit below the direction vector here. Oh, and you can see, ooh, okay, this is the fun with letting MechJeb handle things though, is that MechJeb, as impressive as it is not a real pilot. It's not a person, or a Kerbal. So sometimes it struggles a bit, and okay, okay, this is spinny enough that I'd struggle to save it even if I was handling it myself, but I'm leaving MechJeb in control because I'm going up now, and the atmosphere is so thin that I can flip and spin around like this, but without it doing any damage to the plane. And take a look at my apoapsis and time to this spinning is causing a huge amount of drag, so it's slowing me down at a crazy rate. Look at that. That's not time accelerated. That's ripping in as it is. Starting to get a bit worried now that I might actually get an accidental landing. But no, we're up into the thin atmosphere again now, so that's going to stop. And you can see too, we're starting to pull it under. Well, MechJeb is starting to pull it under control again, just because there's less force on it trying to pull it sideways. So yeah, well, that was a little bit dramatic, but it did the job. And yeah, Jeb and Ambo are fine. I'm sure Jebediah is claiming that he intended that all along. Okay, so we're in a nice little capture orbit now. Just a tiny bit of tweaking here and there with the nuke, and we should be able to get this to whatever orbit we feel like. So let's have a look at the drag again on the way out. Okay, you can see here I've got the nose pulled down hard again to make the most of the last bit of drag, circularize my orbit as much as possible before I get out there. But you see how the drag's all on the top now? Because that's what I'm pointing into the wind. And no drag on the tail fin because we're going straight. Anyway, cut forward a bit. So we didn't come here, well, I brought some tricks to play with. So let's have a look at what I brought along with me. So we're going to be landing on Juno eventually, but before we get down there, there's a couple of things I wanted to do. So what have I put inside that cargo bay instead of my normal satellite? Aha. Okay, some of you who play with ScanSat may already recognise these, but yeah, what I've got here is a SAR sensor, which is a synthetic aperture radar, and I think that's a multispectral scanner, the other one. So yeah, I've popped myself back up into a relatively high orbit with a bit of inclination on it, so I can do some scanning of the landing sites first. And if you haven't seen ScanSat before, this is what it does. You see, well, you saw the little map there. Here's the big map, and that's in a polar view. So you can see, because I'm not in a proper polar orbit, I'm doing a bit around the horizon. But that's where I was planning on landing anyway, so that'll be fine. I'm changing it to a more conventional map view here. So you've got 3 different map formats you can look at in ScanSat. And this is from the radar here, so this is giving me altitude information. So purple is high, red is a bit lower, yellow is a bit lower again, green is down in the bottoms. And take a look there. Look at that, straight angling up in the middle. We've got this lovely long, straight, low valley, which is going to be a perfect landing strip. Okay, planets that are hard to get back off of, like Eve, etc., those you want to land high, so you can get back up again. Planets that are hard to slow down on, like Juno, because the thin atmosphere, you want to land low, because the lower you go, the more drag you get out of the atmosphere. So yeah, find a nice straight and looks relatively flat along the bottom valley, and I can just fly down the length of that. But okay, that was from the radar. I've also got the multispectral scanner on board, and instead of doing altitude, this does biomes. And you can see I'm halfway through the scan here. You can see that path wiggling up and down. I've got about a 45-degree inclination or so. So from the point of view of the planet, that wiggle up and down is what I'm doing. What it means in effect is that after I've scanned for a while, I'll have the equator and a decent band either side of it, the same as I had for the radar image. Um, so that'll give me more of an idea where to go. That scanner also does anomaly detection, picking up things like the arches on the moons and that sort of jobby. Okay, this is switching back over to the altimetry sensor, the radar, but using it for slope data instead. So instead of giving you height, this gives you flatness. So you can see those little bright lines and ridges and things, steep slopey hills that you don't want to land on. And there we are, back to the radar. Brought this back up because you can also see the legend down the bottom. So give you an actual altitude reading for all those colours you're looking at. But still, what we're seeing here is that there's a good, obvious place to land straight down that nice long valley that's angling up to the northeast along the equator. And if you see how my orbits, well, as they go around each orbit, those lines tracking where I'm going will shift across gradually. So if I just wait and orbit for a little bit, eventually my flight path is going to be lined up perfectly with that valley again, and I can just come cruising on straight in. So yeah, I think bringing this radar along was worthwhile, as well as having all the scientific information from the first ever close-up radar and biome scans of Juno. We've also managed to find ourselves a nice, safe landing spot. So yeah, this will be cool.